Hello one and all, and welcome back to ArcheAge Inspiration. Today's rolls are 1, 5, and 10, so let us see what we get. Looks like we have Battle Rage, Songcraft, and I guess it'd be Vitalism. And that is a Bloodthrall. Well, that's a pretty sweet name. Alright, let's get to it. Alright, here I am in Cairnord Inister. And I want to show off the Bloodthrall, what I took from it. So a lot of the builds that I've been doing for this series have been aimed towards various sizes of battles and all that kind of stuff. And this is no exception. But this is probably the furthest reaching build I've come up with. This is a build that's intended for very large scale fights as a hard support. There's an interesting thing that I've kind of noticed in terms of how I like to build my character and make builds in general for different situations, and that's when you're in a very, very small fight, every person should be able to handle themselves and be more or less a self-sustained unit. So there's not really much of a need for support. People can be sort of single-minded. You know, I do damage. I am a tank. I am a healer. And characters that are super versatile in a very small scale fight tend not to be very great. Well, let me rephrase that. Builds that try to do too many different things, as in like I'm a CC support, I also heal, I also do damage, don't end up being quite as good as people who are builds who are a little bit more straightforward and that would work well in 1v1. Builds that work well in 1v1 also usually work reasonably well when you start tacking on a few extra people. And then there becomes this interesting part when there's about, I don't know, 5 to 10, maybe 15 people, where you can get away with doing a build that's very broad. So, for example, I've played as an assassin before. Assassin is witchcraft, shadow play, and vitalism, using the shadow play for a little bit of melee damage, the witchcraft largely for its CC elements, and the vitalism for healing. And the build does quite well. It does exactly what I need it to do. It fills in slots that otherwise wouldn't be completely needed. It allows me to be versatile and switch myself up as the situations arise, and otherwise just play my character to its effectiveness based on what I want it to do, which is very good feeling. And then the cycle continues, and I think when you get up to the closer, like having 25, 50 people, that's when it's okay to sort of re-specialize and probably even specialize even deeper than you otherwise would. And so that's what I've chosen with this particular build. I've chosen a build that is intended to be used for very large-scale fights, ideally on land, as a true hard support. You have very little in terms of offensive capabilities. You have all of the healing stuff you can get, including all the way to the lower cooldowns, the magic defense for your entire group, higher healing effectiveness when heals go critical, increased spirit even just to push your heals up a little higher in addition to Aaron Zip's boon. The decreased cast time just kind of taken, not really super important. In fact, we don't get a decreased cast time here for reasons that I'll talk about when I get to the Songcraft part. But, this is potentially a little bit more optional. You could pick up something like maybe Renewal or maybe even Mend, which is a little dicey. It's not the greatest. But it does have a very massive heal for all allies within 20 meters. So in very, very, very large scale fights, there's a good chance that Mend may be useful, and you could potentially drop Alms, but that's left to be seen. Otherwise, we have the normal healing stuff: Mirror Light, Resurgence, Antithesis, Fervent Healing, normal stuff. And then coming over to Songcraft, we have the hard support package, which is all 4 of the songs: Ode to Recovery, Quick Step, Bloody Shanty, and Bulwark Ballad. You'll be playing all 4 of these largely. This will be your main goal for most situations, is just to be providing these buffs for your entire party, and then you can switch over to healing as necessary. In addition, Rhythmic Renewal tends to get a pretty bad rap, but I think this actually fits in quite well with the way that this build pans out because of some of the other synergies. For example, Zeal and a few of the other things that will occasionally pop up when you're doing it. And then, of course, we pick up Healing Him, which is a very nice heal, bouncing around and healing a bunch of allies in a clustered area. So lots of AoE healing potential, certainly some good single target healing potential with Antithesis. My healing equipment is not that great, but Antithesis scales at a 630% healing power ratio, which is quite powerful. It's a very, very large amount of heal to a single target. And due to the nature of all the other heals and such that you'll be triggering often, you'll get quick recovery, so you'll be able to use Antithesis more than you would think. So one of the fundamental goals that I had in mind with this was to try to fit in a build that could actually get both of the capstone passives for both of these different trees. So Vitalism has the Joyous Spirit passive, which gives a faster cooldown on all the things that do have cooldowns, in addition to the ability to remove them even more quickly with quick recovery. And then Songcraft has Zeal, which is an amazing ability which significantly increases the amount of healing you do on critical heals while also increasing your critical heal rate. I think the default critical heal rate is around like 11 or 12%. I haven't quite exactly figured out how this scales and if there's any stats that affect it. If you guys have any ideas, please let me know, because I haven't really had a chance to completely figure that out. But yeah, critical heal rate 11.8%, raising up to 16%, so pretty decent. And the interesting thing is that each tick of any of your heal over time spells and such, and every individual person who's being targeted with one of your heals has a chance to critical and thus a chance to proc Zeal. So when you're handing out large quantities of heals over a large group, there's a good chance that Zeal is going to be proccing very often, and when it does proc, any heals that are already ongoing will be affected by Zeal's increased healing effectiveness, which is quite nice, meaning that your overall healing efficiency will be very high. So I think this build can really support healing quite a few different targets, especially for stray damage. I mean, in very large fights, you know, people are going to be getting focused down very quickly. Your best bet there is just to continue to perform Bulwark Ballad, Bloody Shanty, all the buffs that make your party just amazingly powerful. Of course, making sure that you have Rhythm and Rule. And then if you do see an opportunity, especially where, say, one of your initiators is invincible, using invincibility from the defense tree, then would be a perfect time to temporarily cancel your songs, toss out a bunch of heals to get them topped off, and then go right back to playing your songs. So this may seem kind of a cop-out because I didn't really touch Battle Rage, but I actually think this is kind of a smart thing to do occasionally. When you have two trees that work so incredibly synergistically together, and you're trying to be a single focus character, in this case, again, trying to focus strictly on being a large group's support, it's okay to just go completely into two trees and almost ignore the third one. And what I've done with this third one is I've picked up Terrifying Roar. My initial idea was to take Bondbreaker because of its ability to remove crowd control and such, but it's a little too specific, especially for group play, because a lot of those CC elements right there are only really devastating in a skirmish that is smaller scale, and you're more likely to get singled out by like a bubble trap or something like that. Whereas the general use of Terrifying Roar is quite nice. For example, the Weaken means that anybody who is charging in towards you will deal significantly less damage for 7 seconds. And in addition, when you use this buff, for 7 seconds you get a 20% duration reduction for Stun, Trip, Fear, Snare, Shackle, Silence, Sleep, and so on. And so as a general anti-CC ability for any stray crowd control that comes your way, this is a good way to use this and guarantee that you'll have a much higher uptime or a much higher chance to cast a lot of your heals, especially when a lot of them are instant. It'll really throw off anybody who actually is trying to CC chain you. It does cost you, of course, the time to use it, but I think it'll be worth it. And if you're going to pick up a single ability from a tree, I think Terrifying Roar kind of fits the bill here, for sure. This duration reduction stacks, to the best of my knowledge, with the Cloth Set buff, which you should probably be wearing with this build, decreasing the duration of all debuffs by 30% and then a further 20%, meaning that any of the crowd control that hits you is going to be significantly lowered in duration. There are even some options to pick up things like reduce stun and silence duration here if you think it's going to be even more useful to reduce that, but I chose not to do that for this particular build. One other interesting note that I've noticed is, just as I've seen in other videos, that Disciplined Performance here will actually trigger upon your own magic heals criticaling on you. So there's a good chance Disciplined Performance will be up with a decent amount of uptime. It will, of course, disable itself occasionally, but this does help you mitigate any magic damage that you would take. And it's very likely in a large group that you're going to get hit by stray magic far more than I think you'd be getting hit by stray physical, because of the prevalence of AoE spells, you know, stuff like people trying to use meteors to jockey for position and so on. I think these are some things that you're likely going to be seeing, and you have some recourse against that between wearing cloth and, of course, actually triggering Disciplined Performance. So that's really all I had to say about this particular build. I was doing a little bit of testing with it and did find that, you know, almost all these abilities, all your heals can really get critical hits. It's hard to show these things off without having somebody to do a large amount of damage because the heals won't display and show their full effectiveness unless they're actually healing something. So, but if you want to play a hard support, and this may even work for dungeon instances, the amount of healing you can actually get just by casting a Rhythmic Renewal and then Ode to Recovery, you know, especially combined with the extra attack speed and damage stuff that you'll get from Bulwark Ballad and Bloody Shanty, it's quite high. So as a group support, maybe in a 10-man raid, possibly even in a 5-man group, playing a hard support certainly could be viable for that. And if you're going to do something like this, picking up a third tree with just a single ability is certainly viable. In an instance, I would probably suggest something other than Terrifying Roar, and probably something other than Battle Rage. Likely Auramancy would be nice for either Protective Wings or the mana regen. Meditate. You could also potentially drop 1 point from here and get both if you're going for Auramancy, but that's a little outside of the scope of this video. Really just wanted to show the potential of grabbing 2 trees, maximizing them as much as you can, and then only picking a single ability from the third tree. And I think this will actually work, especially for a very large guild. So if you're a part of a guild, there's a lot of people, likes to do mass combat, consider picking up this as a hard support ability suite for you and your kind. So that's all I had to say about the Bloodthrall. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.